This episode has visual components, so if you're listening to this, you'll definitely want to find the video version and give it a watch.
Nice shorts theme song. Nice shorts. Yeah.
Howdy, hey, and welcome to Nice Shorts.
I'm Fuyang,
And I'm Johnny Knittle.
and this is a show where we interview animators about the shorts they make.
Today we have Lindsay Berkebile.
Lindsay is an LA and Portland-based stop-motion animator and director working in TV, ads, and films.
You may have seen some of her amazing work on Wendell Wild, I'm a Virgo, Robot Chicken, Crossing Swords, and many other super awesome projects.
Today, we talk to Lindsay about the cutout animation she did with Netflix for Maya and the Three and Centaurworld.
So come hang out with us and learn from Lindsay.
And now on with the show.
Lindsay Berkebile.
Aha.
Yeah. Oh
my God.
Hello.
We did it. Hello.
There is so much to talk about with you because for some reason you just do everything.
Which is funny. I feel like I don't do everything. I am someone who very much thrives off of crews, but I think it's because I work with so many amazing, talented people that, you know, I recognize that I am not the best at like anything. So it's like I love hiring people who are the best at those certain things because, you know, it's like it's for me anyways, this industry is the magic comes from collaboration. Because, you know, it's like no matter how good you are at everything, you will always make something better together than you can by yourself. I work with a producer. She has gotten a lot of these promo recreations, and they reached out to her to do stop motion recreations of, you know, they're basically the favorite clips of their shows, and I'm on her team and I'm like the stop motion person. So, you know, immediately she called me and was like, I'd like us to pitch, this to them. And that's really how the conversation started. So, I started putting together pitch packets, which I use Keynote to do. And I knew that given their budget and they sent us like they weren't necessarily like, we want to do these clips, like definitely these three. They like sent me a library of like, I don't even know how many, like I'm just gonna ballpark and say like 20 or 30. And they were just like, we're thinking like one of these. And I went through each one, and some of them I just really liked it.
Okay.
And then some of them were definitely airing more towards like, this is actually possible. I mean, it was like constant, even though I know the Maya and the 3 one was a lot of camera moves and various things, at least there were only like 2 characters.
Okay.
And then the Centaurworld theme song one, which was my favorite one of finished product of the 3, although that had like what felt like 68 million characters, a lot of the shots were static, and there was a lot of cycles in it, a lot of run cycles. But that ended up to be, it's like you can look at things and be like, okay, this is a little bit more simple, and then whenever you're in it, you're like, oh, there's like all the things that make it pretty hard. I actually think the easiest one of the 3 was Becky Apple's, because that one didn't really have a lot of camera moves. There were 3 characters involved, and it was a lot of close-ups. But anyways, I went through those, all the clips, and I kind of like picked out, like, I would really like to do these 3. Also, I was looking at time because some of the ones that they sent us were like 4 minutes. And I was like, not possible. But they were really receptive. It's, like they were like, yeah, like totally. We don't know. Originally, they also wanted to do like some BTS. But with the length of the clips, I think they were anywhere from like 1 minute to 2:30. With the length of the clips, and we had 3 months to do all 3 of them. I was like, I'd rather put all the money into the project, and not do the BTS unless you have extra budget for it, which they did not. So we ended up not doing BTS on top of that. But yeah, that's really the initial, like how it all started. And they were really receptive to, especially since I've done a lot of downshooter, and downshooter is like something I'm very passionate about. And I have a team already that like I have a paper fabricator, Sam, who like specializes in paper craft and also is a talented animator. So he understands, besides just the fabrication, like how to make things easier for the animator, and he's a great friend. And, I have people who are DPs who are used to, lighting downshooter. So, it felt the most streamlined option as well. And they were really excited, to have someone who had that experience.
Yeah. When you're looking at like these 20, it looks like you're already coming out with like the character budget, but more for time. So you're already looking like, okay, how many characters there are? What other things are you looking at? You're like, we're not doing that.
I think it has a lot to do with the amount I start with a fabrication standpoint where the amount of characters is going to be a ton of time. But also I actually loop in my fabricator from the beginning, because again, I don't have, like, I can look from an animation perspective all day long, knowing that also a ton of characters on screen is going to be more, animation time. If they're running, but let's say it's not like a run cycle. If there's things like they're coming to camera, all those things, then the background has to be shot separately and all this stuff. But then I also brought in Sam and was like, I chose these like 7 clips that I feel like are doable from an animation perspective. And I'm like, let me get your perspective on it from a fabrication on what's more difficult, what's going to be more time. And there were things that I didn't quite think about where, there were a lot of like turns. If there are turns, you have to have multiple puppets for that one character. And even though I can fake some of it, like, and also things like if they're looking one way, you get a profile puppet, that's a whole other puppet. So if there is a lot of different angles of different characters, even if it's just medium shots, that's more time as well. So we just kind of put our heads together and like talked about it, and we're able to narrow it down, which is usually the approach I take to everything. It's like I usually like to hire the heads of the departments right away, because I don't like making decisions on their behalf, because again, I know how to fabricate. Am I an expert in it? Absolutely not. Do I have a trained eye that have learned over multiple seasons of like shows and features, like that certain things are hard that no one thinks about? Like, no. But that's why I have them.
Well, I like how you consider when taking a project or choose either clips you want, you also think about your team and let them to help you, like what kind of load they might think it's gonna happen or not, because they are going to involve with you through the whole process. So it's like you consider it for them. I'm also curious, like, how about some clips when you see them and you like it? Is that what kind of reason for the like? Is that the story hits you as well, or is that the challenge you feel excited for that?
I would say with these, it was completely different reasons for each clip, which is probably why I chose 3 completely different ones. Becky Apples was because I loved the song. I thought it was hilarious. Like, I laughed the whole time. I just loved it. I was like, this is amazing. And also honestly touches on a subject that I hadn't seen in animation before, which is like, like women hating on women, and how actually that's not the answer, at the end of the day. Like, she was just like, I don't, she doesn't know this woman, but because her crush likes her, she's like, F Becky Apples. But, it teaches a lesson also that like at the end, she's like, oh, like, maybe like maybe I shouldn't hate on her. Like maybe she's just a regular person, anyways.
Yeah.
So I chose that because of that. And also it fit the parameters that I needed it to fit. I chose theme song because I loved all of the wacky blur frames and morphs and anticipations and just I don't know, all the Looney Tune-esque, over the top animation that I don't normally get to do in feature and a lot of television work, to be honest. Those are the things I'm really passionate about. So I was like, this is going to be fun. And then I chose Maya and the Three because all the effects that I was able to do, that's the other thing I'm passionate about. Like I love light painting animation. There were a lot of things that I knew were going to be challenging, like characters coming to camera, and how do you do that when it's just
a flying puppet?
Yeah, there's a flying puppet and they're super small and they get big and there's a lot of running and action and explosions and I was like, oh, from an experimental standpoint of being able to do special effects animation, which I love doing in stop motion because it's like the Wild West. I was able to do a lot of that and black light, a lot of black light stuff, and it just seemed really fun. And again, semi-feasible with just two characters. So that was my emotional, I guess, reason for really wanting to do those three spots.
So once you chose the clips, I'm really curious. So you said you had the lighting things you wanted to do to challenge yourself, and we'll get through the IKEA light for the sunsets and the backgrounds, and then I have no fucking idea how you did it for the Maya and the Three. Just they are light stripes. I'm like, ooh, pretty. So curious to do those, but then the rest of it is very on model. How?
No, that's a great question because again, recreating something frame by frame was not something I've actually ever done before. And it ended up to be really fun. I learned a lot. Not only about how to do something like that, but also shocked at some of the animation choices in getting to frame by frame. It was a mix of ones and twos, and Centaurworld was surprisingly all over the place where sometimes they'd throw in threes. It was wild. I remember going through and just being like, huh, okay.
Checking the time code going, this is right?
Yeah, I'm like, well, okay. And it works.
Yeah.
I would say 70% of the time I would follow their pattern of doing ones and twos. The other 30% I would just flip to twos, just because I didn't really feel like personally, and again, this is just personal opinion, that having it on ones was absolutely necessary for certain shots, and also need to save on time, and it didn't really hurt the finished product to do it on twos instead of ones. But for the most part, it was also semi faster sometimes to just follow when they switched from ones to twos themselves, just because I could just be a little bit mindless and just kind of pump it out. Whereas when you go off script and just do twos, you have to use, more interpretation and brain power to get that done.
Yeah.
And the plan was actually to do that. But again, I didn't expect that once I was in it, that I was just like, oh, I'll just follow the thing because I can be a little mindless and just kind of put all my effort into figuring out how to translate that into paper and less into getting the movements perfect because I already have the map, which is nice.
Okay. How do you get from that frame to the perspectives on the paper?
So you mean once they're already fabricated, I'm sitting down and I'm animating?
I'm curious how you even decided to get the scale. 'Cause, I mean,
Fabricated,
yeah,
yeah.
because you have
Okay.
a picture on a computer screen, and now you need to turn that into a picture on planes of glass.
So we would sit down
Hmm.
actually at this exact computer, and we would go through frame by frame the entire piece. And we started with Maya because we felt like that was the most complicated, which I kind of wish in hindsight that we did that backwards, just because Maya was such a learning experience that the other two ended up to be, in my opinion, like phenomenal. Like I couldn't be happier with how it turned out. And
Yeah.
Maya, I still like, but I see all the learning, you know, like it could have been better, like the things that we learned from Maya, but it is what it is. So we would sit down and we would go through frame by frame, and we would just talk about everything. Like coming from a producer background, like we call that like a tech meeting.
When you're working for Netflix, what are their rules on you sharing stuff?
Once it airs,
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh, cool.
Like nothing till it airs.
Right.
Well, actually, no, I got their permission beforehand that I was like, oh, while I'm doing stuff, as long as it doesn't like fully show what I'm doing. I'm like for example, if I were to film my my screen and you see like a little Maya and the Three like clip in the corner, I'm like, is that a problem? And they're like, no, as long as you don't show like the animation, you know, like they were okay with me sharing that I was working on something to do with Maya and the Three. But I talked about that with them ahead of time. I pretty much do with every client, just because, you know, I have a social media presence, and I also like to build up hype beforehand. And a lot of times, at least on the commercial side of things, I know television and features are different, but on the commercial side of things, it's free advertising for them. So most of the time they're very stoked. Once in a while, they'll want it to be super hush hush. But for the most part, they're pretty open to like little teasers of things, as long as the final animation isn't shown until then. But then once it airs, they're like,
fine.
There's this, I guess, shameless plug for no reason, because it's not like I wish they sponsored me. There's this paper. I mean, well, they're like a drafting store in Portland called Columbia, like Paper Supply or something, on East Burnside. Oh my gosh, I love them. I love them. They have such variety of paper, and probably the biggest supply I've seen in a store personally. So they had a lot of fun things that I know Sam and I would go together and we would just get inspired, where sometimes we would find, you know, like this over here, this texture, and we're like, oh, we need that for you know, for leaves, or, you know, a slightly transparent thing for the cloud. Like, you know, we kind of knew what we wanted, but then going there and being inspired by, you know, being open to certain things was definitely a highlight.
What is a paper budget for something like this?
To be honest, I think our entire budget for all three pieces, for like the fabrication side of things, was like $1,500. I'm not even sure if we used all of it.
Oh wow,
Oh, wow.
that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like yeah, we had a lot of paper, but like paper isn't that expensive. And they come in pretty big sheets. And what we're doing, like, yeah, some of them take up the whole sheet. But for the most part, we reused a ton of these things. Like, not all of these are made specifically for each.
You're just zooming through some of the coolest shit.
I know.
So good.
You know, a lot of these are like set pieces that we zoomed in on, and I was like the set dresser. So Sam was fabricating everything, and how it basically worked is, before the shot, I would just get in there and start putting things together. And it was a lot of like, hey, Sam, I really need, you know, I'd call him into the studio, which is like right over there. And he was fabricating like right over here. And
got to get an air comp system anyway.
Yeah. And I'm like, Sam, I need the proc, you know, over here. and like another tree. And he's so fast. You know, he would just be okay. And he'd like disappear for like 10 minutes and come back and be like, I made variety.
Amazing.
But then again, we would be able to keep those, you know, and kind of get creative with things.
Yeah.
But it was also helpful that, you know, we had this map, as you can see, for how things were going to look. And we were able to stay, you know, we took some creative liberties, you know, but not, you know, honestly, not, we didn't have to take too many. I will say most, if not all, of these backgrounds were shot separately as a separate pass. And then the characters were all on green screen.
Okay.
And the reason for that, Tucker Berry did all of the VFX. Shout out to Tucker. Poor Tucker. I mean, we all collaborated, but he had a lot of work. And he fucking knocked it out of the park. I still don't understand. I threw him some doozies with this one.
So were the steps all VFX after? Like them falling?
No, everything is animated. I'd say the only thing that was VFX is like this character here was actually animated pretty big on the screen.
Okay.
And I just did a loop. I didn't like move them around. And then Tucker had it jump. Where is that? Like added some blur and had it jump and moved it in post.
Okay.
Wow.
It shrunk down because again, we don't want to create a really small puppet
Right.
to put in there because A, really hard to animate. B, that's another thing that Sam has to make.
Yeah.
So we wanted every single profile puppet. You know, we just wanted to have one. So we had one profile puppet and we would either have Tucker like shrink it or
Bigger scale.
Bigger,
yeah.
if needed, which was much easier to do.
So the closer you are to something, the more grains you're going to see in the shot, right? So you get more texture as you're zoomed in on it, as opposed to when you're pulled out. Did that have a large factor in how you decided to do the zooms?
No.
Okay, cool.
Because if anything, the more information you have, like if you were to have the character kind of bigger and then you shrink it down, you're going to have more information when it's small, which is actually better. You know, we always want more information. And worst case scenario, if we want it to be a little blurry, you know, you can just blur it and post quick and make that decision afterwards. Tucker is someone who just, it was great, like really needed very little direction because whatever I would give him, he would take it then. You know, I would be like, oh, make it like an 8. And he would like give me like a 20 in a good way. Or I would just like, this is more phenomenal. And he was like, yeah, like I thought. And he would just go ahead and do it in the best way where he's like, oh, I added some blur here and like this needed to happen. And, you know, there's a hot spot. So he just like took care of everything. Right. We work so well together.
Awesome.
Because we're just Tucker, like on the same.
Tucker Berry, you said?
Yeah, Tucker Berry. And Sam Shumway is the paper fabricator. I want a huge shout out to this project would have not happened without Sam.
Well, so there's someone who helped you build the downshooter, Lee.
Yes. I'm going to mispronounce his last name. I'm so sorry, Lee. I've never heard it. Peffer? It's Peffer. I really should just call him and be like, I really need you to pronounce your last name for me. But yeah, he designed and built the whole downshooter. Like I told him, you know, the sizes and kind of what I wanted. And I mean, I'm literally looking at it right now because everyone's wondering why I keep looking over here because it's like
in front of you. Yeah.
Is it just glorious? Like it's your shrine? Like there's
it is. It is like the best thing that has ever come from a budget that I've been given. Because I use it all the time and he made it so it's modular so it can shrink for, you know, smaller projects. But the camera can go up and down. Eventually we're going to MoCo that. And the cool thing about it is he built it knowing that we're going to expand on it for future projects.
Right.
So, you know, it's like this is working great, but it's like for the next budget, we're going to Moco the camera on top so it can come up and down and maybe like move across the planes, with
Yeah.
rollers or through Dragon Frame. Depending if I ever get another huge budget, I'm going to Moco all the planes of glass so I can just press a button, have them go up and down. Because I would say that was the only complaint that I had, which we knew, is moving the planes of glass up and down, to fit certain shots. It kind of takes two people because it's so big that it takes like one person on one side because you
like unscrew or something.
It's not a screw. It's like, like a handle that like pressures it. And so you open it up, but then one side, because there's 4 pegs. I mean, there's 4 legs. So like one side would go down, but then the other side, it's like, you'd have to run over there and like, then that side falls down. And it's like, it's just easier to have one person on each side being like, okay, now lower it. Think of it as like 2 C-stands holding one thing. It's like, it's easier to have one person on one C-stand going down while the other person is also going down.
Yeah.
So
they're like free floating clamps basically then, instead of having like notches for a dowel or anything like that, or a pin.
Yes.
For anyone who is curious about it, there are plenty of shots of it on your Instagram stories saved for each of these.
Yeah, if you just go, I think there's one called Centaurworld and one called Maya and the Three. It's in the saved story bubbles. You can just go through there. I even think I have the 3D render that he sent me whenever he was designing it, being like, this is what it's going to look like. So I could approve it before, we started purchasing. It's made out of 80/20 pieces, which is like these modular, I don't know, adult connects.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're not, but it's called 80/20. And we made it out of that. And then there was a huge glass shortage because of the pandemic. And so I am so lucky. I had to go on OfferUp out of desperation. And I just found this farmer in the deep boonies of Oregon who's like, I have all these planes of glass. I don't know. They're just dusty. I need them gone. And they were all the exact sizes I needed.
Oh.
And then the bottom 2 planes are actually just plexi. And I got those special ordered because that wasn't hard to find.
Does that reflective surface being slightly different change anything or no?
No. If anything, so that was a choice.
Okay.
And the reason is because I couldn't get my hands on, I needed tempered glass just because I'm going to be all over it. Which just means that it's like scratch resistant, like it's really strong. But I needed what I preferred to have is the ultra clear, because glass, if you look at it and it's like a certain thickness, there's a little bit of green.
Yes.
Just a little bit. And that's common. I mean, you don't really recognize it. It really becomes an issue when you start stacking them on top of each other and looking through. It starts cutting out the light and things turn a little bit green. But you can spend significantly much more money. It is really expensive because it's really specific to get like special ultra clear glass. But because of the glass shortage, I couldn't get my hands on any for like 6 months and the project would have been over. I called everywhere. Also, it's super expensive. I used the green glass. It's just the way I got around that is, so, there's pros and cons to using glass over plexi. Plexi can be ultra clear and it's much cheaper. However, plexi can get scratched much easier. If there's no support in the middle, it kind of bends depending on how big it is. And also cleaning it is a nightmare. You can't clean, you have to get special, it's like a special cleaning oil, and you can only use microfiber cloths
to wipe it.
To wipe it, like it just scratches so easily, and like anything like Windex or even certain soaps will ruin it.
So like that glitter shot would not have happened on plexi.
I think part of it was.
Okay.
because I have 4 planes of glass. The first 2 are glass. The bottom 2 are plexi. The bottom one doesn't matter because usually I have a big piece of cardboard or paper completely covering it. It just needs to be there to hold something. So it doesn't really matter. In fact, like in hindsight, I'm like, I probably could have just put a piece of wood down there, but whatever. I actually didn't even think about that till right now. The third plane was plexi, but most of the time that was just set pieces. But once in a while, I would use it for animation. It just, it's just kind of a bitch to clean between, but you can get it clear. So it kind of cut down on that green. Again, eventually I would like to get the super expensive, ultra duper, super duper clear.
Yes.
I also think that you can get it. I might be incorrect, so no one like quote me on this, but I know Jake, who was my DP, he said that there's a glass you can get that's also ultra clear that cuts down on reflections. It's like made to cut down on reflections. That was a big issue in shooting this because there were multiple planes. A lot of times the puppet would be, actually, I'd like to show an example.
Yes.
The puppet, this is a great example, would be on split between plane 1 and plane 2. Entire puppet most of the time was not on one plane of glass, and that was for ease of movement. Because if you have the arms on a separate plane, you can move those freely without like trying to keep the body still. And for certain effects like this, where she's flipping, if I remember correctly, this what's it called? This like sword on her back was on the first plane, and you can even see it. Her arms, her forearms are also on this first plane. They're a little bit brighter. And then she compresses down. I think I moved them at one point. Here I have her move down a plane. The head moved down to plane 2. And then eventually, like, her head is on plane 1 now. The rest of her body's on plane 2.
Lindsay, the perspective is so crazy.
Yeah, and this is a combination. So remember, we had all these puppets made where it's like we had like a front Maya, a back Maya, and then profile Maya.
Yeah.
And a lot of times for the shots, I would have them, but I would Frankenstein them to create the things I wanted to. Like this is like back and front Maya.
Wow.
And then I would move the feather to make it look like a top view. Because again, we don't have a top view. So this is the back view and moving the feather to make it look like it's a top view. So we came up with this word for it where we just quote unquote Frankensteined all the puppets that we had together to get the movements that we wanted to. But you can see some of the reflection issues here on her face, which this is what I don't like in the piece. I'm just gonna like put it out there for everyone, is like the reflections from the glass and her red visor. It just with the glass that we had, like it just was a little bit of a nightmare. And there wasn't much we could do. And that was one reason too why we shot all the characters on green screen, because if there were reflections beyond the lines of the character, those would just disappear. So that was a way to kind of
avoid
that.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing that you didn't trace anything. Like, did you eyeball fabricating all of this? Like you have it, it's all great, but it's all just like the tongue has a fewer amount of curves, or when she was flipping, her head was a little lower. So yeah, I never talked about that. I meant to. So Sam and I at the beginning of shots, so look at the original shot in the corner.
Yes.
We would look at the shot and we would go through and I would talk about what is absolutely necessary for me to get the shot. And like here I was like, we do need replacements you know, from this perspective to this perspective, and he would trace those, but you know, we took liberties with simplifying, you know, some things.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like here her face tilts down, not necessary. You know, I was like, I'll just move her head down in that perspective. Her hand comes out. You know, I was like, I need hand replacements, and we decided on how many was necessary. A lot of it too, you know, I told him like, not necessarily for this shot, but you know, I'm like, if you just give me the fingers loose, I can animate the shapes. These you can see my Frankensteining. There was a lot of Frankensteining, you know, like this size of dragon, and then I needed this size.
Oh, you'd have both of them, yeah.
But I wanted to kind of blur it into it, you know, like, but you don't notice. I just needed more blur and texture there, so I kind of overlapped it. And then here I actually zoom in, so I don't even. This is the same puppet from here to here.
Yeah.
I added some blur and post, and then I think I'm just zooming in on this one puppet, and it's on green screen. So I'm just zooming in, and then I told him if I had one straight and then
the curly.
This is actually the same. I think we had two replacements, because a lot of times I was just turning the wiggly tongue like
upside down. Yeah.
And I told him that, you know, we worked that out, because I was like, I don't want you to spend time doing that, because in animation, you know, I can fake a lot of it. So that's kind of how we would go through is, you know, and he would write down, okay, I need 2 tongue replacements. We only need to make 2 sizes of the dragon. Like, she's going to zoom in. Like the mouth needs to be loose. There were some times too where I would just cut things on the fly that I needed, like that shape, like I could cut, you know, if I needed to. I don't think I did for this shot, but a lot of times while I was going along, I'm like, oh, I need one more, you know, and you don't really know till you're in there. Like I would just do
help
it.
with that. Yeah.
And that was all one puppet. This one was a special. We only used this Maya for this, just because this was like one of the closest that we got on her face. But you can see we only used, let's see how many. I faked her starting to move here by just overlapping the front facing like this. I didn't actually, like, her body isn't turning. I'm like faking that in animation, but these are one headpiece, another headpiece, and then we switch here. And then we switch to the behind puppet. So, you know, again, we would go through the original thing, and I'd be like, okay, I just need a front facing puppet, probably a different perspective here. So that's like a second head. And then I'm like, and instead of making all of these, which would all be custom cut, I'm like, just give me the profile. Which I knew would work, you know, and that's why him and I were needed to go through everything together, so I could basically pare things down. And there were some things too where he was just like, I'm like, oh yeah, I need all these things, and I'm like, and he would be vocal and be like, do you really? He's like, I can make that for you, but I'm worried about time. Because he'd be like, you know, these are really complicated, actually a lot of different angles and shapes. And then I'd be like, oh, I didn't know. Let's pare this down. Let's simplify it. You know, let's make it easier. Like this, I told him I didn't need any special things, because again, I would just Frankenstein pieces from different puppets to get, you know, like I just flipped from this to this, even though that's not necessarily what was happening in the animation.
But it works when it's moving. Yeah.
But it works. And so anyway, that was the process. And then, you know, once I'm in there, once in a while, you know, not too often, our planning worked out really well. Once in a blue moon, there'd be an issue where, you know, I would be like, I really need this one thing. I don't think that happened with any puppets, which is like, go Sam. And it mostly happened with set pieces, but that was expected, and those are so fast and easy. Yeah,
to you, are you very enjoy this this kind of creative, this way of creative, like problem solving, and use sometimes limited resources, but you just make it happen. You enjoy that?
That's my favorite. Favorite. I think it might be the experimental animator in me. It feels like, yeah, problem solving and being, I feel like I'm the most creative when I have limited resources and I need to create something, because it's like I've spent all these years learning all the foundations and principles of animation, and becoming like a really good character animator with like weight and understanding character performance, and which is phenomenal. And then I got to a certain point where I could start then throwing all that away and learning how to break all those rules and like think outside the box and be like, okay, to get this certain movement, like, I'm going to do these things, or maybe I'm going to use these supplies in this way. And usually for my projects, just because once we're in production, like time is money and I want everything, I would rather spend a lot of time, in animatic and pre-production and talking to my team, so that when we're actually in the trenches, like things are moving and we're, it's just basically it's turning out exactly how we planned, which is great. But one of the funnest parts for me in pre-production is the research and development, the R&D, where it's like, okay, how are we going to do explosions? And and kind of like playing with that, or one thing with the Becky Apples was there was this lighting effect on her face where she was looking like really evil, and then it slowly fades. And it's like, how do we do that when I only had my DP scheduled, like not during the shoot? He would set up the lights, and then like I would kind of do the little IKEA lights and like minor adjustments throughout. So I didn't have my DP to like MoCo something. So it's like, how do we do that? But that's super fun. I find it super fun because with stop motion, sometimes it feels like there are no rules. And that's what's really fun about it is whatever you think of, it can be as janky or weird or like maybe never done before in stop motion, but if it works, it doesn't matter, What we ended up doing for the lighting effect is actually just using the a battery powered flashlight, which if you leave it on over time, it's going to fade because the batteries are just going to die. And so we just, while we're shooting, we're like time lapsing the flashlight and timing each frame to be like a minute apart, so that slowly it's fading until the flashlight died. And then,
that's a very bold move.
Yeah. If you had to redo that, you'd be like, damn, that is
well,
awesome,
I mean,
though.
the good news is we could redo it. Like it was just close up on green screen. I did not animate that. Erica did. She got it in one try. It looks phenomenal. Yeah, she was someone, Erica North, she was someone who stepped in and helped give me breaks. I don't want to work 7 days a week. I got sick, unfortunately, halfway through the production and could not animate for like 2 weeks, but we had no leeway. And with such a small crew, that's kind of a big deal. So Erica was someone who I called to jump in. And then because of that, we were put behind. So then I hired her on like weekends, so that like I could have a break and still have weekends. And then, she had like the weekdays off, and we kind of tag teamed a lot of it. I think she did most of Becky Apples. So grateful for her. But yeah, she killed that.
Yeah, I remember it's not only, it's very nice that you try to take care of yourself with this tight timing for produce the clip, like almost like 1 month for such a complicated thing, but you also like very taking care of your team members too, like make sure their working hours are on the good standard for everyone's well-beings.
Yeah, I mean, you're just gonna get a superior product if you I mean, basically treat your crew, even if they're not union, like they are a union. You know, there's no union for stop motion.
Mhm.
So protecting your artists is so important. I know if we become over budget or under, you know, or behind schedule, like that is my fault first. And so the only person who should be stepping up to, you know, either work overtime or weekends or anything should be me, because that's my mistake. Not that that has happened often, because listen, I don't want to do that either. So, you know, it really teaches you to learn how to budget and schedule realistically and be very, very stubborn with that with clients, and being very transparent as to why. And most of the time, you know, you get that. But I know my crews, they don't work. They will get paid for overtime if, you know, they're in the middle of a shot and they want to stay for like an hour, but I will not let them stay longer than an hour, even if they really want to. At like, will not work more than 5 days a week. There's nothing that they do that will be unpaid. Like even spec work, like if I'm not getting paid from the client, like no one that I hire, because that is such a trope with artists where, you know, it's like, oh, do this work and you'll get paid on the back end. And then a lot of times you don't, it's just expected. Or, you know, it's like, you know, trades, or all of us have done so much free work, and like, that's BS. Like you would never ask an engineer to, you know, start making plans for a bridge in hopes that they'll get paid later. That's not how it works. And
they get paid for the interviews.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, I'm really passionate just because, you know, I've been through the abuse of the industry and have seen so many of my friends also deal with it. One of the reasons I wanted to become a director and head projects is because I think that things can be run better. And I've seen proof of that. It's not like a pipe dream. I've also worked on productions with like Open the Portal, for example, is a great studio where, you know, they've done pilot episodes, you know, and they've still treated their workers, you know, extremely fair, and again, got a superior product out of it. Like if you and your friends and coworkers are happy, and well paid, they're going to be passionate about the project and put more effort into it because they feel valued and refreshed and, you know, present, and also have work-life balance. And a lot of the ways that things are run don't need to be that way, but a lot of the mindset is like, oh, well, it's always been this way. It's like, okay, well, you can say that about a lot of terrible things in you know, in the world's history where they've changed, and it's pretty clear that they needed to change. To be honest, I really think that the artist should be getting residuals from the you know, features and television shows that they work on, because they're the ones who are making it. You know, it's interesting to me still that the people who get residuals are like the people on the business side of things who, I mean, they like ran the business of it, but they didn't have a hand in the artistry and the creation of it. So, I mean, but that's my own hill to die on. I'm trying to create environments that I want to work in, and run them the way that I would want to work with them, and you know, provide that for my friends and my crew. And you know, if you know, any of us get a job and it's a good job, like it's a win for everyone. It's a win for the industry, you know.
But talking about right now about the crew for this, would you be cool talking about like how you found, actually, and if you wanted to mention all of the crew, that'd be awesome, but how you found them, and then if you're open to like how you budgeted for how much, like what their wages would be, how many hours they would take.
Yeah. So I found Sam Shumway. Sam, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Why is this so
It's
anxiety producing?
it's
But
their fault. It's their fault for having last names.
yeah, Sam, it's your fault.
Yeah.
Uh, because he was really good friends with Tucker.
Mm.
And Tucker and I had already been working together for a while, and we floated around each other in the stop motion world. He mostly animates and features, but he was doing some directing work in New York City, which is where he met Sam, and they worked together a lot. And he just like sung his praises left and right for his paperwork.
Mm.
So yeah, I got connected to Sam in that way. Actually flew him to Portland, and so I put in the budget for that. I'll talk about the rates and stuff later.
Mhm.
And then Jake and again, I'm going to pronounce Jake's name incorrectly. I want to like look at it. I'm sorry, Jake. Jake, I love you. Hallsworth. We worked together on Wendell and Wild. He was an assistant camera. And I just loved his energy. He was probably one of my favorite people in lighting to work with, just because like not only did he just bring a great energy, but everything like super professional in the way that like was just always, you know, like, what do you need? What do you need? And then would just like do it, or preemptively be like, by the way, I already like set these cables so they'd be out of your way. Like always thinking like 4 steps ahead. And I recognize that because again, I like people on my team who see problems before they happen, because again, they're experts in that field. And Jake was definitely someone who does that and is also just like excited to help you, you know, and like I said, just that energy and talent. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, you know, I mean, he's a great AC, but I'm like, I have a feeling, because he also has so much experience beyond that, you know, beyond being an AC, you know, he's done a ton of DP work and camera work in like many different ways. And I'm like, I bet you're actually, if you know, just as good, if not better, as a DP, which I was very much correct with. He's someone who I will work with if he's available on almost everything I do as a DP. Phenomenal person. With scheduling for that, you know, we only had him like nights and weekends because he was busy on another project. But that's really all we kind of needed. Because I knew once we got the general setup for each piece, like each piece kind of called for different lighting, but as long as we had like the general setup for each individual shot, I could like put a flag here if I needed, you know, use the IKEA lights to do highlights. I could like put a flashlight somewhere. Like I could kind of just tweak it along the way. Yeah. And then I already explained Tucker. Tucker is someone who quite literally just does everything. But like somehow an expert in everything. Jealous much? Yes. But yeah, it's actually super helpful because I love working with him. So anytime I'm able to have him on my team in any capacity is great. And you know, he was willing and excited to do the VFX for this. And also he has obviously a ton of animation experience. So having an animator be your VFX artist was really helpful in the planning stages, because we could talk about how I could film things to not make his life an absolute living hell. Even though I know this, sorry, Tucker, I know this project was a lot. So then with rates and stuff, to be honest, I just ask my crew most of the time. Whenever I'm doing the budget, I don't do the budget and then hire people. I will, when I'm doing the budget, I will call my crew and just ask them, what is your rate? And sometimes, not always, they will tell me a number that I think is too low. Some people, you know, I'll be like, no, your rate's going to be this then. And I also let them know the hours. I know I will admit, Sam definitely put in some extra hours for us. The sickness thing threw us off, and I would have preferred that not to happen. Yeah, like, set the rate, let them know that we were going to buy the plane tickets. I had a whole apartment that I was still paying it's so weird. That wasn't this one. So this became just a studio. He lived there. I lived like up in my loft up there, and just like turned this entire place into like a full-fledged studio. But that's kind of how I work the rates. And then with the scheduling, I would also work with them. Like, I'm pretty familiar with what things take now, scheduling wise. I know with Sam, I needed to lean a little bit more on him with like, what do you think the schedule is? And then I usually add a contingency to that. So like, I'm just going to make this up, but let's say I come in for a commercial project. Like, how long do you think fabrication is going to take? And he's like 2 weeks, which is 10 days, Yeah. So 2 weeks. And I'd be like, all right, we're going to make it 3. If he gets done sooner, he still gets 3 weeks of pay.
Yes.
Those have been budgeted for his time.
Yeah.
So, I don't feel right just like pocketing that money, because that was already promised to him. And if anything, it's like, congratulations, you kicked ass and got this done in 9 days, like bonus.
Right.
Also, that's just going to make us look better for the client. And then the client's going to hire us more in the future because we were ahead of schedule.
Right.
And so like, they deserve that bonus because they freaking kicked ass. So yeah, I mean, it was this. I think that happened with Jake too. We didn't need him as much as I originally scheduled. But I was like, we scheduled you for these days. Like, I promised you this amount. Like, that's yours. Because again, I want to treat people how I want to be treated in the industry, and also don't want to create environments where people I hate it, where it's like people feel like they need to piddle around because they want to be there for 3 weeks. When, they could have, like, listen, we've all been guilty of it. It's like, if you finish it in 2 weeks, you're going to get 2/3 the pay you were promised. So it's like, you might spend a lot more time on things, to make sure that you get that whole pay. And it's like, that's so stupid.
Yeah.
It's like, just do it in the time that it takes you to do it. Obviously not expecting anyone to finish early, but yeah, anyways, that's how I normally do pay.
You mentioned Sam, Jake, Tucker, but you also mentioned Erica was doing animation. Was she just brought on while you were sick? And then was there anyone else?
Yes, she was an animator. Well, she was brought on here and there to give myself a break. I think before that, and then I brought her on like way consistently when I got sick. Yes, we had some fabrication helpers. Veronica almost, and and oh my gosh, I forgot. James. Yeah, James A. Moore, Morr. He was our digital artist who helped Sam out with tracing and creating the Illustrator files so that we could use the paper cutter. And, there was a lot of like tracing and then interpreting those things, and also like run cycles, especially with Maya and the 3, we had a lot of 2-camera runs. And so creating the shapes of the legs and the arms, that was a whole thing. And James actually did that almost solely by himself. And like, it was an R&D thing. Like, it took us a couple tries, but he knocked it out of the park. Like, I remember Sam and I working with him. We were like, we want to bring him on with everything we do. He was like a lifesaver.
What's a 2-camera run?
Oh, like a run cycle that is running towards the camera. So it's like front facing. Okay. And you're like running forward, because you don't get the silhouette of like the arms going this way with like paper cuts. It's like, you have to do replacements of like weird paper shapes. You have like getting small and weird back here, and then like long, but like towards camera. So it's really hard to figure out because you also can't quite trace it either, because that would be a night. So it's like we had to find a balance of like, how much am I going to like animate and fake those things, and how much are going to be stricter placements. I think the legs, we ended up basically making them like glued, like strict replacements, because they were so complicated. All the weird shapes that we had to make it believable. That was the hardest part, honestly, I think, of Maya and the Three.
The 2-camera run?
Yeah. Here's one of them, but it's not the full body. Let's see.
So you can't. So you have to do it all in one.
I mean, the hands were replacements. So like this is one replacement, that's another replacement, and then another. Like I'm just looking at the one arm.
Yeah.
And then it goes back. Same thing with the feet. This was animated full body, but you know, got cut off in post. Sure, there's more. There were so many.
Those wings.
Oh, that was phenomenal.
Johnny's favorite.
Well, my favorite stuff we haven't touched yet. The lighting is just like the lights. It's also cool.
So you can see the leg shapes here, like with the feet going up,
yeah,
how they disappear, and you know, and you already saw like the hand shapes.
Yeah, that's another, especially for Maya and the Three, because what you translate is not like Centaurworld's 2D and to paper cutout. This one is 3D, and you need to interpret in simplify. So, wow, that you and your teammates, yeah, James and Sam, they also need to recreate a new form for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they really had to translate some of it, like, you know, trace some of it and then translate it. And you know what is really funny is some people, whenever they were watching this piece, they were like, oh, well, it's just a recreation, you know. And I was like, nobody understand. Like even some people in animation, you know, they were like, oh, you just follow the map and you just, and I was like, this took so much, you know. I'll also credit to Erica, like so much animation skill to be able to know, because you have to know how to break those rules and how to think outside the box to get certain things to look a certain way. And you need it to look a certain way because it is a recreation, but sometimes you can't follow the map. And you know, it was definitely a team effort all around, and you know, was a huge challenge. But everyone brought their A game, so thank goodness.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it is, I like it when you mentioned about like experimental. It is, you start to break a rule, but more have those creative juice, is because you have such a solid fundamental, you understand all the things. So even though this you need to recreate, but you need to have so much skill and knowledge about it, so you can break down all the things and make it happen. So
it was really fun. I cannot express enough how much fun this project was. It was work, you know. Obviously there were some days I woke up and I was just like but for the most part, once I was in there, it was hard for me to stop. There were days where I would start animating at 7 a.m. because again, I can work on my own schedule. And all of a sudden it would be 8 p.m. And I'm like, I didn't mean to. I was just like really into it and like excited and being like, oh yeah, but I just want to do one more. I just want to do one more shot. Super fun, super fun.
How do you learn to animate glitter stop motion? It's just, I'm trying to imagine like timing that and going, how?
Is that a test or it's really one shot?
This is one shot. There is some compositing going on, as you can tell. Again, thank you, Tucker. And we shot, this was on green screen.
The glitter alone?
Yes, because of the camera move. Sorry, it's been a little bit, so I had to remember.
Oh,
I
so
actually
you
wonder. Let me see if I have the raw footage for this. All the
Oh,
explosions are on one take. I animated it.
wow.
So what I did, so I was animating these little dudes flying, wee, and then I had a star filter on the camera lens, which I'm sure if anyone from Open the Portal is listening to this, they're probably giggling because I'm known to be obsessed with using star filters on everything. And then I pointed a flashlight. I like balanced it to be like on a plane of glass, like aiming straight towards the lens. So it's like blown out in this star pattern. And that was for one frame. And then I added some glitter in an explosion shape and then had the flashlight below it. So there's like a little bit here coming through the glitter. And and then here I changed it to a purple blacklight flashlight and put it down one more plane. So you get more of these star shapes. Can you see my mouse or no?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so you get more of these starbursts that are purple.
Okay.
And then this light is a little less. And then I just took a paintbrush and all of this glitters on glass, and I'm just moving the glitter and creating those shapes. And then I take away the flashlight and I kind of explosion it out. But what I do is to get those little light flickers and stuff. Oh, sorry. Ooh. Like there's, little light things. I'm actually pointing flashlights at the glitter so that some of them are sparkling.
Oh, wow.
And again, just moving them and with a paintbrush and getting those shapes. Tucker zoomed in on it here in post. I didn't do any zooming or anything. And then I did the same thing for the next one. Flashlight under the glitter, blacklight, flashlight, explosion. I can't fully remember. Actually, I want to pull up the raw footage of this because I'm curious myself.
So when I was looking at how you stored the puppets, there was a lot of like painter's tape with the numbers and scenes and shots written out, and they were just kind of stuck to it. So then when you laid them all out on the planes, is everything not attached to the glass at all? It's all just free? Or do you have some sort of adhesive, right?
Actually, that is a good question.
Yes.
Both.
Because if you sneezed, you'd be fucked.
Yeah, I was going to say, listen, am I saying that's smart? For certain pieces, I would tack them down. For certain things, because they were on plane 3 and 4, and I knew I wasn't really going to touch them at all. No, sorry. Again, this was a little bit ago, so I just remembered how I did a lot of these things.
Yes.
A lot of the backgrounds aren't being animated. They're actually still frames. So I would just place them there, light it up, take 10 photos so you get, that chatter that nobody really sees but notices if it's not there. It's just like articles. And then I would give it to Tucker, and if there was a camera move, I would shoot it much wider. It's like, and then he would zoom in on certain parts of it and maybe move around if needed in post. Once in a while for like, rocks going and stuff that is animated. Like some of it would be animated. And those I would then tack down. And I would just use sticky tack, not sticky wax. It's too much of a bitch to clean up from glass. It's
like that putty stuff.
Poster tack, yeah. There's like a
Yeah.
specific kind. I should know this.
How high quality of a picture are you taking with the camera so you can do all the zooms and keep it so crisp?
We shot this on a Canon 60D, so whatever resolution that is.
Perfect.
We know the percentage that one is able to zoom in before it starts looking weird. Or at least Tucker and my DP would notify me of that before the shot. So, I wouldn't do something that was absolutely ridiculous.
Do you go into a project with, okay, cool, in this project, I want to learn how to do this thing better or that thing better? Because it feels like you did that with lighting in this one.
That was something I was already pretty experienced in.
Okay.
So I actually knew what I was going to do before I started talking to any crew, when I decided that I wanted to do this piece. It's something I've experimented on tons of projects, paid or not, just because I love doing it. So those things were already in my arsenal. It was just letting them shine in the right project, I guess. Because the thing is, like, I get a lot of people too who are like, oh, I had no idea that, you did down shooter or whatever. And it's like, oh, technically I actually kind of specialize in it, because it's one of my favorites. It just all depends on what I get paid to do.
Right.
I'm not getting paid to do down shooter. It's like, I can do so many things. I enjoy doing so many things, but not every client is going to come to me wanting a down shooter thing. So, left to my own devices, that's not always true, but left to my own devices, like if I'm just going to go animate something right now, it would probably be more often than not down shooter. But now that I've been doing down shooter so much, now that's not true. It's like if someone were to be like, oh, go animate something today, I'd probably do something a little bit more traditional character stuff. But I think that's just because, like, everyone likes variety. Doesn't mean I don't like down shooter anymore. It's just, I don't know. Just
you need to release your creativity.
Yeah,
spread it out.
And I also don't want to get stale in one genre of animating in stop motion. Like, I don't want to animate just puppets for so long that I feel like I'm a little stale with down shooter or pixelation or large scale or whatever it is. Experimental. And not that you necessarily lose those skills, but it's like riding a bike, where it's like, if you haven't ridden one for a long time, there might be a day or two where you get on it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, all right,
it sounds like because you are a director for so long, it's like sometimes it depends on the story, and then you already have so many experience with different materials, so you can choose what better for that story.
Yes. And the other thing is, down shooter and puppet animation is not always correct for the product or the story or whatever it is you're doing. It's like, the fun thing about having a tool belt with a bunch of different tools is, for each project, you're able to look at what you have and be like, this tool is going to be best to best showcase, whatever it is that we're doing. Which is really fun. And then also doing that, you also get to work with different people with different skill sets, and kind of, keep expanding your own knowledge. It's like, I learn so much from working with different people all the time and collaborating with them, and taking the time to, understand everything that they do as much as I can, so I don't make their life hell. No one wants that. But also, it's fascinating.
Speaking of other people's roles, so you love lighting and you're good at it. Lighting Lindsay. When you're working on this practical
animating lights,
okay.
I need these. I need Susie Shercliffe. I need Jake Halsworth. I need everyone.
So Jake is actually who I was going to ask about, because when you're doing these effects where you are now adding all the lighting from different angles, but from behind, does he have to come in and adjust anything on his end to accommodate that, or are you working based on what he did?
I'm working based on what he did. Once in a while, I would call him in and be like, hey, we're running into these issues, like this one light is causing reflections. I've tried to like fuck with it, with these new shots. And I would call him in for like an evening to adjust some things. So it was a little bit a fly by the seat of your pants. Like, sometimes I would just adjust things. Sometimes it would be a little bit beyond, like there'd be some issues with some new shots that were a little different than what we lit that I wasn't able to figure out. And like needed his expertise. So all of the above. So for that glitter shot, this was one pass where just did, you know, the little things and then eventually, you know, they'll explode or disappear or whatever they do.
You have so much shading on them already before you, it's wild.
And I'm also hitting them with a flashlight. So it's like the lights seem a little chaotic. Tucker took that and did whatever he does with it, the magic. So then here is what I'm talking about. You can see it in its pure form, flashlight to star filter camera. I also did a little black light, a laser pointer to get this little spot. A lot of this was lost just with all the chaos and the movement. But and then you can see the glitter and that part behind it.
Those refractions are so clean, like just how the spectrum layer was like evenly spaced out.
And you can see whenever I move the flashlight, what happens here, which is something that I was doing.
That's rad.
It kind of kept it alive when I shot it on twos.
This is so fun.
It looks so hard to see, like when you're in creating it, to see the details of what you're doing yourself in Dragonframe must have been difficult.
No, not necessarily. I mean, some of it is a little, you know, I see it as like playtime. It's like if I take a frame and I start playing it and it doesn't quite look right, then I just redo it and do it different that you know, fits whatever trajectory I'm trying to do. Like I think with these, shooting these on twos, I might have first shot them on ones and then played it back and was like, the ending needs to be on twos, but then it might have been too static. So then I might have gone back and shot it on twos, but then moved the flashlight to keep it alive. And that was like the compromise. So a lot of it is like while I'm animating, it's me also figuring it out on a little on the fly, but it's kind of low stakes because it's not like you have to put a whole puppet back to where it was. Right. This is just glitter, so you can just move it back and reshoot it. So it's like not that big a deal. And then Tucker took this and just, you know, like zoomed in and made it seem like it was flying at you and, you know, made it into 3 and like, what a badass. And then I did the rocks.
Oh, wow.
You can see I got lazy and just stacked them in the corner.
Well, key out.
This was all on ones with like some replacements. And these were all rocks that we already had. We had so many different rocks for me to play with. So we put a black light on it and just moved them fast on ones. But as they came to camera, you know, it just plopped on the bigger rock.
Yeah.
Like they're really flying.
Wow.
That's actually kind of fun. I haven't seen that in a while.
I like seeing footage. That's so cool.
You shot these. So hold on. You did this October, November, December, you said, of 2020?
2021.
2020.
Oh, that's right. Because they came out the beginning of this year.
Yes. I think they came out December.
Oh. They came out like right away.
Yes. In fact, I think they were releasing as we were going.
That's terrifying.
I mean, it sounds like it, but that's also kind of what television is like.
And commercial.
Yeah, it's like you're making the show, and while you're on episode 8, episode 1 is airing or something. So I guess I was kind of used to that.
There's this show I don't want to say. The Post House, we were there because I was working out of some studios in there. They would be mixing the show, and then they go from the dub stage to a trailer in the alleyway and air the show like right then. It was just like print, done, layback, air.
See, but I kind of like that because I'm so impatient. Like right now, I'm waiting for like 3 things that I've animated this year. It looks like I've done like no work this year, which is not the case. I've done like 3 huge projects, and I'm just like sitting here because they're not being aired right away for whatever reasons. It's like I'm just kind of sitting here like waiting for them to air, which is
I could ask you questions about this all day. Do you want to do some more on this, or do you want to jump into the one that you also did sound design for?
ooh. I leave it up to you. Listen, I can talk happily about it's like you allow me to talk stop motion. It's like most people, in the world, they're like, stop motion, is that like Pixar? And so,
Oh no.
and then the people who are in the industry, it's like we talk about all the time. So what else is there to talk about?
Yeah, because so far, like what we are talking for this paper cut, like there are so many cool. I feel very pioneering thing. Like you guys make it out. So it's so many good thing. We even haven't shown like Centaurworld. Like if
It's like
there's
what my
anything you
favorite
want.
shows.
Yeah. We even haven't go to that. But you see, Maya and Free has already so many good stuff.
That's a good
So-
point. We're only like 1/3 of the way to the Netflix ones.
So yeah,
Sorry,
thank you,
I
Lindsay.
laugh a lot.
No, it's
Like
perfect.
your team. Yeah.
You're gonna be our first 7-part interview, and I am excited about it.
7 part for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like for is there any more like Maya and Free we'd love to tackle like Johnny, we have a lot of questions,
you know,
right? Or
can
should we
I-
go with the world?
Can I jump into a weird? So here's one that me and my music friends talk about sometimes because no one talks about this shit. And this is in our careers, one of the biggest things in the world, digital file management.
Oh,
Are you
How-
looking at this?
Yeah, but like how you store things. And I've seen people do it by shots and scenes and all kinds of weird folder structures and the file names or whatever. I'm not peeking at your screen too much, but it looks like
I don't care.
you are one of the more organized people as well that actually have a good system.
I cannot take full credit for that. Thank you, Tucker.
no.
So
Tucker.
I had my own system, but it was not this thorough. Tucker came on and he was like, we are doing a server infrastructure. And he used the same setup that he was using when he was directing with a company in New York City.
Okay.
And he really liked that structure. So he went in and structured everything that honestly was to help him the most. But what was really cool is, I personally use Dropbox, again, by Tucker's suggestion, very thankful for that. Because I myself and my team it's a server. They can access that if they're in the studio or working remotely.
Right.
And also there's no like uploading things to hard drives because, I would put all of my Dragon files in here. And as I finish them,
online only.
they're already there for Tucker to grab from. But then we also have a color coded system where we would mark certain things, certain colors for certain reasons. And it's sometimes different per project and how big it is. This one was pretty big. So we needed like a color coding system to signify like, this is done shooting, this is now in post. I would also color code certain things to be like, this needs VFX attention. There were some shots that didn't need any, besides maybe some like color correction. There was a whole place to put notes in there as well, that I would put notes like, maybe some things changed a little bit from what we talked about. So I'd be like, hey, there was light flicker in the left corner of this in post, like I'll need you to do that so that also I don't forget. So as soon as I'd be done with a shot, I would just, put the note in there. And then, he had this whole, like we have a place for all the assets of like, that would be, they would send us, this is what Maya and the 3 skin color that we really need. Here is, the raw footage of the actual clip. Here's the audio. Treatments, which we don't have anything in here right now, but that would be like my keynote documents, whatever I pitch to them, storyboards, animatics, et cetera, et cetera. design we didn't use for this one. But then the edits, you know, After Effects, Lightroom, photo, you know, Premiere, and then the raw files are where we keep dragging. And then BTS, you know, if we shot any for client or for ourselves, also so that other team members can upload what they took, you know, if they're also, because I encourage everyone, like, film BTS for your Instagram or like whatever it is of what you're doing, like have fun. And then put it in the BTS folder so we can all access it, so that once it goes live, we can also like promote some things that you made that maybe you were, like, while you were making it, which it's also not necessary, but you know, it's also just helps promote the thing. And also we can all use it and tag each other. And, you know, social media is a great tool for getting your work out there and getting more clients and, you know, stuff. So I always encourage that. And then the deliverables is my favorite, because that has, you know, obviously some old files of some deliverables where then they needed to be different for the client. You know, we have ones with the, I think with and without the thing in the corner. Oh yeah. They wanted the actual footage, you know, to play on after that.
Yeah.
You know, so that we have
Gotcha.
all of those. But yeah, that's the infrastructure that I used for this, and that I kind of used for all my projects. I just did an Adult Swim bumper, and you can see I definitely pared it down, because that was a smaller project, 15-second spot, you know, and it was like just Tucker, Doug, and I, you know, and we all live.
Doug's a new one.
Doug's a new one. Doug Cummings. He's my best friend, but he's also he's probably like, we're kind of like a 2-person team now. He's a fabricator who literally does everything. So it was just the 3 of us, which is actually a pretty normal team for me now that I've moved to Portland.
Oh, tiny question. Oh, sorry. Am I
a
cutting
little
you?
question. Okay.
Yeah, because like, yeah, Johnny was asking about like your digital, how all the arrangement, the system. How about the system of the replacement? Oh, you have. Is there anything, be logistic or something? Yes.
Yes, that was a learning experience. We started out where we had these, I don't even know how to describe them, like little tiny open shelves with like little slots, and we would label them like shot 1, shot 2, shot 3. That was chaotic and like sort of worked. Eventually we started keeping a bunch of things in these little plastic cups that we had that were labeled. And I had like certain shelves that were like shots coming up, and then like storage of things. But listen, like once in a while things would get lost. Like it definitely wasn't the best system. We only perfected it by the time we got to Becky Apples, which was the last one. And we started using a binder system.
Oh, wow.
Why didn't we think of this before? It's amazing. I mean, it is like, you know, using like these clear binder sheets.
Yeah.
So we would like label it, because a lot of times, you know, it's not just like whatever puppets in here would be just for shot 4. You know, Sam would then go, you know, this is for shot 4, 6, 11, and 12. And then, you know, you'd flip it, and there might be like certain set pieces for shot 1 and 8. And, you know, he would label, and we would kind of try and keep them in order, but, you know, there were multiple shots for certain things. And then we would put them all in a binder so that I could just flip through and kind of also be able to take them out and bring them over to my animation stage. And be like, okay, so I have all the pieces now for this shot. And then the only problem, you know, there's pros and cons to everything. The only problem to that is a lot of times I'd have to then Frankenstein puppets from other shots to get what I needed. But it was a much better system that then once I was done with that, I was able to then, I'd have to spend time sorting through what I Frankenstein and be like, okay, so this was all this one puppet that we're going to reuse. You know, I stole these pieces from these other things and kind of put them back and keep them organized. So that is 100% the system I am using with paper pieces, no matter how big or small the project is, basically forever. But then, or wait, this is kind of fun. And there's some pieces like this that are so big that they don't fit in the binder.
Oh, super close up.
Those are huge. I didn't realize they were that
I
big.
have them out because I want to frame them. But
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. Yeah.
Around to it, you know.
Oh wow.
But
That's have you
in the other room, I have little shadow boxes.
Wow.
It was really hard to choose because it's like I have so many like ones that Sam made that I love that I want. Oh, I'm sorry, did I kick you, Papa? Oh, I'm sorry. That I just love them and I want, but then like my house would be like covered in like 50 shadow boxes. But I do want to frame these ones. But you know, sometimes there'd be ones that are too big, and then we would just put those in a separate area, you know, like near the binder. We kind of had like a table that was only for upcoming shots and assets. So there'd be like the binder on there and maybe like some pieces that don't fit in the binder. But you know, each project would have its own binder or maybe multiple binders as well. Like, you know, if we ended up doing a much larger project, there would be binders for just certain set pieces like trees. There'd be binders for just puppets. There'd be binders for larger set pieces, you know, whatever it is, so that things stay a little bit more organized. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely something to build upon, but that was the system that worked the best out of everything that we tried. The only thing that ruins paper is the amount that you reuse those puppets and reuse those set pieces, because every time you put wax on them, or you know, I get my dirty little animator hands all over them, they just deteriorate over time. The other way that we organize things is we would have cardboard with some masking tape tied up, and then we would put like all the mouth pieces.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, Sam would write like, you know, these specific mouths are for these shots. And like that was helpful because just having them in a binder, for example, where I can't see all the little pieces is not helpful. So having them laid out like that was more helpful. I was taking a lot of the experience that I had working mostly in television for the organizational aspects of this, because those are ways that we've definitely organized things for like Robot Chicken or Super Mansion, Crossing Swords, and also seeing especially like studios like Stupid Buddy, as they've progressed and, you know, got more and more shows and more experience, you know, some of those systems definitely were upgraded, and I got to see those. So a lot of those, you know, I could implement in my own stuff, where I was like, oh yeah, like they definitely tried this like one way of organizing. I remember that working. So so I do want to show off this shot. This was my baby shot. I mean, this was like my like pride. Oh wait, I'm not sharing anything. Okay, so the horse was shot separate because I didn't want to deal with it while I was creating everything else. And then everything shot behind the horse is practical. So she wasn't shot on green screen. She was shot on the actual set itself that was lit. And she's running in, and this shadow was a little circle made from NDF, which is a neutral density filter. It's used in lighting to cut down some of the film, and it's like transparent, but it's kind of dark. So I put that on a plane of glass that was just below her. So she's on the first plane, that's on the second plane. Kind of move it with her, and then she does this spin. Which again, this is like Frankenstein puppets. Like I switched to a side one and kind of like move the ears and I don't know, move her butt weird and jump her up. And then this, because we had to R&D this, and this was a big discussion. We were like, how do we do this? How do we get a spotlight? So how we did this is this neutral density filter. We cut that triangle shape out. So all the negative space is that NDF
got covered a little.
And then, and then she's just, in there, and it makes it look like a spotlight went on and everything else went darker when it's just a filter. So this is just a flashlight pointed down. Like I turn the flashlight on and just put it on the glass, like above the puppet.
Yeah.
At the end, and just popped it on. And then to get this squash, I just, compressed all the paper pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And again, moved the butt that's on a separate plane from that side to that side. And then to get the 3, I just added another NDF behind it. There's so many weird frames in this. Like if anyone framed through it, I mean, I find it hilarious, but there is bizarre shit going on. And then this zoom is practical too. So from here, actually zoom in the camera straight onto her. And then this is a replacement puppet. So that's actually
the big one.
Mhm.
Oh,
but that's this.
yeah.
So we get bigger here.
Did you have any problems overlapping all the NDF like that?
No,
Because no.
I'm just putting it on the glass. So I don't know. It worked out. I mean, we didn't have time to R&D this, so just kind of worked out.
Yeah.
Looks great.
But
Is
yeah,
that Virgo innovative?
and then I jiggled the eye to get the little
Foo's got a great point. Have you seen that done before?
I haven't. It doesn't mean it hasn't been done before, but I mean,
that's nice.
it was one of those things where we brainstormed. It wasn't like someone was like, "Oh, we should do this." We sat there and we were like, what if we did this and this and this and this?" And then eventually I was like, "What if we got like transparent paper?" But then I couldn't wrap my head around like another part of it where, I was like the NDF, and then Sam was like, "Oh," and then we could like just cut out in the negative space. And I was like, "Yes." And, so again, that was like a group effort. In
That character is so great.
this was hell. Listen, I will fully admit I wanted to kill myself during these running shots, because each character had to be shot separate, and it was like these run cycles on ones. I was just doing endless run cycles of all these characters on ones, all separate. Same here. Again, we have replacement legs. The background is practical. I was doing blur frames with paint and just moving them while the camera shutter was open. So you get it makes it look like shit's going down.
Yeah.
So are those zoomed individually, or are you actually doing bigger puppets?
That's a great question. This one is zoomed and replacement.
Because the head, okay, for perspective.
Yeah. So these are zoomed. They're not replacement, but the Derpleton, the giraffe, he was my favorite in all of this. But
very, very good
this
character.
is the shot I just wanted to show off, and then we can move on. Erica did that.
Oh, well, actually, I remember there's one thing I did want to ask you. Is the background IKEA lights for the light shift?
Oh, yes.
Even light painting, right?
I believe that
Is that the light have the coding itself, like it will transform into different color?
It looked at the behind the scenes, like when you clicked it, it just automatically turned on and went from like red to something else. Like it was going to always cycle.
I think it was Specky Apples. Yes, this is it.
What is the actual jerk here? Oh, Jessica, making me feel bad about projecting my own insecurities and displacing blame on her.
There. This is the shot I was talking about with the lighting, with the flashlight that fades over time.
Oh,
That's badass.
That was what I was talking about earlier with the flashlight.
Yeah.
That was just a battery dying.
But that's so cool.
This one, we were crunched for time, so we had a lot less puppets to deal with. So I'm a fun thing for anyone who's interested is the blue horse. she gets real weird, like, because we just had to Frankenstein the crap out of her. And you can see here, like, the design is not the I mean, it works. It's just, it's like a little, like, funny thing behind the scenes where it's like, you'll just see that she slowly gets more and more weird shapes. Thing. There's some doozies in here.
You pick your battles.
I know. Even Erica was like, "Are you sure this is okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool." Yeah, that's it.
That's amazing. I'm gonna clap for you. Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, that's the end of this episode with Lindsay. Stay tuned for more to come.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.